When my husband died, I thought the worst part was over. Until the day my mother-in-law called me, whispering like someone was standing behind her. She said only one sentence. "I found something, and you cannot tell your son." Her voice broke. My heart stopped. Because the way she said it, it sounded like a warning. Like she wasn't just scared for herself. She was scared for me. When my husband died, I thought the worst part was over. Until the day my mother-in-law called me, whispering like someone was standing behind her. She said only one sentence. "I found something, and you cannot tell your son." Her voice broke. My heart stopped. Because the way she said it, it sounded like a warning. Like she wasn't just scared for herself. She was scared for me. I was making tea when the phone rang, a soft, harmless sound that should have meant nothing. But grief does strange things. It makes every sound feel heavier, sharper. So when I saw her name flash across the screen, Margaret, my mother-in-law, a cold ripple traveled down my spine. We hadn't spoken in weeks. Not since the funeral. I wiped my hands on a towel, took a breath, and answered. Her voice came through in a shaky whisper I had never heard from her before. "Sweetheart, are you alone right now?" I froze. "Margaret? What's wrong?" Silence. Then a shaky exhale. "I found something. Something your husband left behind. You need to come to my house. Right now." I grabbed the counter to steady myself. "What kind of something?" Her voice dropped even lower. "Not over the phone. Anne." She paused, like she was checking if someone else was listening. "Don't tell your son. Don't tell anyone. Just come." My heart thudded against my ribs. "Margaret, you're scaring me." "I know." Her voice cracked. "That's why you need to hurry." Then she hung up. Just like that. No explanation. No detail. No reassurance. Just a demand to come. Alone. And a warning that I didn't understand yet, not even close. I stood there in my quiet kitchen, the kettle still steaming behind me, staring at my phone like it might ring again. It didn't. I thought about calling my son. About telling him something felt wrong. But her words kept replaying. "Don't tell your son. Don't tell anyone." A woman like Margaret didn't whisper. She didn't panic. She didn't break. And whatever she found, it shattered her. I grabbed my coat, keys, and purse, my hands trembling more than I wanted to admit. The drive to her house felt longer than usual. Every red light flickered like a warning sign. Every quiet street felt like a held breath. By the time I pulled up in front of her porch, clouds had gathered overhead, dimming the daylight. The curtains in her living room were half-drawn, like she'd closed them in a hurry. A single lamp glowed inside, warm but strange, like the house was waiting. I stepped out of the car, smoothing my coat, trying to steady my heartbeat. One step up the porch. Another. My fingers hovered above the doorbell. Before I could press it, the door creaked open on its own. Just an inch. Just enough for me to see a shadow inside. And a voice, and not hers, said softly. "You're finally here." My hand went cold. Because I knew that voice. And it wasn't supposed to be here. Not in this house. Not today. Not after everything. The moment I heard that voice, my breath caught in my throat. It was soft, calm, almost familiar in the worst possible way. A voice I hadn't heard since the funeral. A voice that shouldn't have been anywhere near Margaret's home. Because the owner of that voice had promised me, sworn to me, that we would keep our distance after everything that happened. Yet here he was. Inside her house. The door opened another inch, and the silhouette shifted. Not threatening, but waiting. As if he'd known exactly when I would arrive. My fingers tightened around my purse strap. "Who's there?" I whispered. Another step. A shape. A breath. Then he spoke again. Don't be scared. She asked me to be here. My chest tightened. Because I recognized it now. Daniel. My husband's business partner. The same man who had cried harder than anyone at the funeral. The same man who had vanished 3 days after, without a single call or message. Suddenly, my mind raced. Why was he here? Why had Margaret called me instead of my son? Why the secrecy? Why the warning? The door opened wide enough for me to step inside, and I did, slowly, cautiously, my eyes adjusting to the dim living room. I expected to see Margaret sitting upright on her floral sofa, hands folded anxiously. Instead, she was nowhere in sight. Daniel stood in the center of the room, shoulders tense, jaw tight, like he'd been rehearsing whatever he was about to say. Where's Margaret? I asked. He swallowed hard. In the back room. She's shaken. I stepped farther inside, closing the door behind me. The house smelled faintly of old books and lavender, familiar, comforting scents, yet the air felt heavy. Like something was sitting in the room, unspoken. Daniel's eyes followed me, unreadable. What did she find? I asked carefully. And why are you here? He held up a hand. Please. Sit down. She wants us both here before she explains. Daniel, I said, my voice sharper now, I didn't come here for riddles. I came because she sounded terrified. He nodded, but something in his expression flickered, guilt, maybe. Or fear. Then he pulled out a folded envelope from his jacket. A plain white envelope. My husband's handwriting on the front. My knees weakened. Where did you get that? I whispered. He didn't blink. Margaret found it, hidden in his old toolbox. My hand covered my mouth. My husband never hid anything from me. Never wrote secret letters. Never left messages tucked inside random places. What's in it? I asked. Daniel took a breath. We didn't open it. She said it wasn't her place to read. And, it's addressed to you. I stared at the envelope. My name in his handwriting, the handwriting I thought I'd never see again, felt like a punch to the chest. Why didn't she just give it to me herself? I asked quietly. Daniel exhaled slowly. Because what she found with it, shook her. She needed me to be here in case. He cut himself off. In case what? I pressed. He didn't answer. Instead, he glanced toward the hallway, where Margaret's bedroom door was half open. A faint shadow moved behind it. And at that moment, the door creaked, slowly, painfully, as if someone had pushed it with trembling hands. Margaret stepped out, pale and unsteady, clutching a thick folder to her chest. Her eyes locked onto mine. And she whispered. Sweetheart, your husband wasn't the man you thought he was. The folder slipped a little from her arms. And something inside it, a photograph, slid halfway into view. It was my husband. Standing beside a woman I had never seen before. Smiling. Holding something. Something small. Something that looked like a child. My body went cold. Margaret's hands trembled so violently that I rushed toward her before Daniel could move. Sit down, I whispered, guiding her to the edge of the sofa. Her breath was thin, uneven, as if she'd been holding it for hours before I arrived. The folder, thick, overstuffed, edges frayed, stayed locked under her arm like she was afraid it might vanish if she loosened her grip. Margaret, I said softly, kneeling beside her, what's going on? What did you find? She didn't look at me. Her eyes were fixed on the floor, unfocused. It scared me. This woman had buried a husband, raised 3 children alone, survived 2 strokes. I'd never seen her shaken. Not like this. Sweetheart, she whispered, I almost didn't call you. I didn't want you to ever see this. Daniel stepped closer, but I shot him a warning glance. I needed her words, not his interruptions. See what? I pressed. She finally lifted her gaze, and what I saw there made my stomach twist. Guilt. Fear. And something deeper, something like mourning. Not for her son, but for me. I went into his workshop this morning, she began, voice cracking. Your husband's workshop. Every nerve in my body tightened. She continued, slow and shaky. I was looking for his old fishing reel, and when I reached for the top shelf, the lookout box fell. It burst open. She nodded toward the folder clutched to her chest. This was inside. My mouth felt dry. Let me see it, I said quietly. She hesitated, a full 5 seconds, before finally loosening her fingers. I took the folder into my hands. It was heavier than I expected. Inside, I could feel papers shifting, and something sturdier. Maybe photos. Maybe documents. I wasn't ready to know which one scared me more. Margaret whispered, "Sweetheart, before you open it, please know that I didn't call you to hurt you. I called because the truth was going to find you anyway." The truth. That word tasted poisonous. I placed the folder on my lap and slowly opened it. The first thing that surfaced was a photograph, the same one that had slipped earlier. My husband. Standing outside a small motel. Smiling. One arm wrapped around a woman I'd never seen. The other holding a child, a little boy, maybe 3 years old. And the boy? God. He looked exactly like my husband did in his childhood pictures. My throat closed. Behind me, Daniel shifted uncomfortably, like he wished he could disappear. Margaret watched my face closely, tears welling. "There's more," she said, barely audible. I forced myself to keep looking. There were receipts, hotel stays, cash withdrawals, small wire transfers. All recent. All from the last 5 years of our marriage. Then, a birth certificate. I stared at the name. My husband's name. Listed as the father. My vision blurred. "Margaret," I whispered, "why didn't he ever tell me?" She closed her eyes, exhaling a broken breath. "Because," she said, "he didn't want the life he built with you to fall apart. And he didn't want his past to catch him." I shook my head violently. No. No, this doesn't make sense. My husband he wasn't this man. Daniel stepped forward finally, his voice low but steady. "He lived 2 lives, he said quietly. I didn't know the details. I just knew there were things he kept hidden." His words hit harder than the documents. 2 lives. 2 families. 2 truths. My heart pounded as I stared at the folder. And then something else caught my eye, still tucked near the bottom. Another envelope. My name on it. A second letter. This one dated 2 weeks before his death. My hands shook as I reached for it. But before I could open it. Before I could even breathe. Margaret whispered the words that turned everything upside down. "He didn't just lie to you, sweetheart. He lied to all of us. And someone helped him do it." My head snapped up. "Who?" Her eyes flicked toward the hallway. Toward the bedroom where the light was still on. And in a voice that broke the air in half, she said, "Your sister." For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. My sister? The one who braided my hair before every school picture. The one who held my hand at our mother's funeral. The one who promised she'd always protect me? I stared at Margaret, waiting for her to take it back. To say she misspoke. To say grief was twisting her memory. But she didn't. Instead, she wiped her trembling hands down her skirt and whispered. She knew. She knew everything. My pulse throbbed in my ears. Behind us, Daniel whispered under his breath. "Lord." I told him this would explode one day. I snapped toward him. "You knew too?" He lifted both hands in surrender. "I didn't know the details. I just knew he had contact with someone in your family." I felt a burn rise in my chest, shame, rage, betrayal, all tangled together. I turned back to Margaret. How does my sister fit into this? Tell me. She exhaled shakily, then gestured toward the folder. There's a document, near the back. Look. My fingers dug through the papers until I pulled out a single sheet, slightly crumpled, photocopied. My heart stopped. It was a notarized statement. Signed 5 years ago. My sister's signature. And underneath it, in bold letters. Acknowledgement of financial support agreement. I blinked at the page. What kind of support? Margaret swallowed hard before answering. For the child, she whispered. My throat closed. She knew. All these years, she knew he had another family? Another child? And she never told me? Margaret nodded gently. She even met the child once. The room tilted. I grabbed the armrest to keep steady. The letter on my lap, the one addressed to me, suddenly felt poisonous. As if it had been waiting for this moment to strike. Why would she keep this secret? I whispered, almost to myself. Daniel answered first. Money, he said flatly. When your husband came to me for help, he said he was paying your sister to handle things. To keep it quiet. My head snapped up. No. No, he would never. But the receipts in the folder told a different story. Small transfers. 200 here. 300 there. Every month. Sent to my sister. I felt sick. All those nights she came over for dinner, hugging me tightly. All those times she said, "You're lucky to have a man like him." She wasn't comforting me. She was protecting her paycheck. Anger rose so fast it almost scared me. I'm going to call her, I said, reaching for my phone. Margaret placed a frail hand over mine. Sweetheart, wait. I pulled back. No. She's going to explain this. Right now. But Margaret shook her head. There's something else you need to know first. She hesitated, gathering courage. And then. It wasn't just money she got involved in. She helped him hide things. Things he didn't want you to see. A chill crawled down my spine. What things? Margaret bit her lip. Before she could answer. Before Daniel could jump in. Before the room could settle. My phone lit up. My sister's name on the screen. Calling me. As if she somehow knew I'd finally opened the folder. My throat tightened. Margaret whispered, "Don't answer it." Not yet. But I did. My voice cracked as I held the phone to my ear. Why, Claire? I whispered. Why did you lie to me? There was a long silence on the other end. Then my sister exhaled shakily and said, "You weren't supposed to find out. Not like this." My knees nearly buckled. My own sister sounded terrified. Find out what? I demanded. And when she finally answered, her voice barely above a whisper, it shattered the room. The child isn't just his. She's mine too. For a second, I couldn't speak. Her words echoed in my skull like something metal had been dropped into an empty room. The child isn't just his, she's mine too. My grip on the phone tightened until my fingers throbbed. What do you mean she's yours? I asked, barely able to push the words out. On the other end, Claire inhaled shakily, the kind of breath you take before jumping into ice water. I can't explain it over the phone, she whispered. Please. Don't do anything yet. I'm coming over. Before I could respond, the call ended. The room was silent except for the faint ticking of Margaret's antique wall clock. Daniel's face was pale, almost ghostly. Margaret's eyes were wide, wet, terrified. I whispered, "She's coming here." Margaret pressed a hand to her chest. Lord have mercy. I sat down hard on the couch, the folder still open beside me, its contents spread like a crime scene. My mind was spinning. Did she mean legally? Did she mean biologically? Did she mean emotionally? Every version was a nightmare. 20 minutes later, headlights flashed through the curtains. My stomach dropped. Margaret whispered, "Sweetheart, listen to me before she walks in." But I couldn't take my eyes off the door. When Claire stepped in, she closed it softly behind her, like she was afraid to wake something sleeping. She looked nothing like my sister. Her hair was messy, her eyes red, and her hands were shaking so badly she had to hold on to the doorknob. "Please don't hate me," she said immediately. I didn't answer. She swallowed hard and stepped deeper into the room. Margaret stood slowly, bracing herself on her cane. "Tell her," she said quietly. "No more dodging. No more protecting him. Tell her everything." Claire's knees buckled, and she sank onto the opposite couch. Her eyes met mine, and instantly filled with tears. "It started 7 years ago," she whispered. My heart jumped. 7 years ago. That was when I had my first miscarriage. "You were falling apart," she continued. "You were grieving, and he came to me saying he didn't know how to help you. He kept calling me. Showing up. Leaning on me." My jaw tightened. "So you comforted him by sleeping with him?" She flinched, guilt cutting across her face. "It wasn't like that at first. But one night, he showed up drunk. Heartbroken. Confused. And I was lonely too. And stupid. And weak. Oh God." I leaned back so fast the couch creaked. Margaret closed her eyes in a long, pained sigh. Claire wiped her face. I tried to stop it. I did. But it kept happening. For years. Whenever you two fought, whenever he felt ignored. My voice cracked. And the child? The silence was suffocating. Claire looked down at her trembling hands. She's biologically mine." My entire body went cold. "He told me it was better if no one knew," she whispered. "He said it would destroy you. That it would break our family." And I believed him. Rage flared so hot behind my eyes that the room blurred. I stood up fast. "You let me hold that child. You let me love her. You let me believe she was some stranger's daughter." Claire sobbed, shaking her head violently. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I thought he'd tell you before, it wasn't supposed to come out like this." My voice became ice. "And the money?" She stopped crying. "And that alone told me the truth. He said it was to help raise her," she whispered. "He said he couldn't put it on your accounts, that you'd see it and ask questions." My entire chest caved in. "He paid you to keep quiet about the child you had with my husband." Claire buried her face in her hands. "I didn't do it for money. I did it because I was terrified. I didn't know how to undo the damage once it started." I stepped back, my voice trembling with betrayal. "You weren't terrified. You were comfortable." She looked up sharply, wounded, but I didn't care. "I lost a child," I whispered. "And while I was grieving, you were raising his." Her face crumpled completely. "I know," she choked. "And that's why I came clean now. Because you're about to find out something worse." "Worse?" Daniel stepped forward. "Claire," he said quietly, "don't." But she shook her head, tears streaming. "She deserves to know." I whispered, "Know what?" Claire wiped her mouth with a shaking hand, whispered. "You're not the only one he lied to. Your husband. He's been planning something behind all our backs." My blood ran cold. "What is he planning?" Claire answered with a whisper that felt like a blade. "He's leaving the country tonight." For a long moment, everything in the room froze. No one breathed. No one blinked. No one dared speak after Claire's last words. My husband. Leaving the country? Tonight? My chest tightened like someone had tied a rope around my ribs and pulled hard. Daniel straightened, forcing calm onto his face, but his eyes were frantic. That's enough, he snapped at Claire. You've said more than you should. But Claire didn't even look at him. She looked at me. He bought a one-way ticket, she whispered. To Costa Rica. Under a different name. My stomach lurched. Different name? How long had he been planning this? Margaret gasped and grabbed the back of her chair for balance. You're running from her, she whispered to Daniel. From your own wife? He didn't answer. His jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle jump. Something inside me snapped. I walked past him, slowly at first, then faster, heading straight to our bedroom. Daniel followed immediately. Where are you going? He demanded. I ignored him and pushed open the bedroom door. And there it was. A suitcase. Fully packed. Hidden halfway under the bed. I dragged it out and flipped it open before he could stop me. Clothes. Toiletries. Cash. A fake passport with his picture. And a different name. My breath turned sharp and shallow. Daniel, I whispered. What were you planning to do? Disappear? Leave me? Leave the baby? Leave everyone? He shut the door behind us, blocking the exit. It's not what you think, he said quietly. I stared at the passport in my hand. Really? Because it looks exactly like what I think. He ran a hand through his hair and began pacing. I was going to come back eventually, he said. I just needed time to fix things. My laugh was bitter. Fix things? By abandoning them? His pacing grew faster. You don't understand. Everything has spiraled out of control. Claire, the baby, the money, the lies. Your lies, I snapped. He froze. And for the first time, I saw his fear. Real fear. He lowered his voice. If I stay here, I lose everything. You already did. He flinched like I'd hit him. But I wasn't done. What about me? I whispered. What about our marriage? Our vows? Our home? What was I supposed to do when you didn't come back? He swallowed hard. I knew you'd be okay. My heart cracked. He really believed that. He believed I'd just adjust. Move on. Forget him. You were going to leave me with a stolen child, a broken family, and a sister drowning in guilt, I said softly. And you thought I'd be okay? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The truth was right there on his face. He was terrified. Not of losing me. Not of what he'd done. But of being held accountable. And there, in that moment, I knew something with absolute clarity. This wasn't a man who made one mistake. This was a man who built an entire life on secrets. Behind us, I heard Margaret limp down the hall. Then her voice, trembling but strong. Sweetheart, she called. Bring the suitcase. We're not running from this. He is. I took one last look at the man I once loved. Then I picked up the suitcase and walked past him. He didn't try to stop me. Because he knew. Everything was about to come crashing down. And this time? I wasn't going to protect him. For a moment, no one breathed. Not me. Not Claire. Not even Margaret. Only Daniel. Who suddenly looked like a man standing in the wrong room. He's what? I whispered. Claire rubbed her palms on her jeans, trembling. He's leaving tonight. A flight under his coworker's name. One way. Cash paid. My pulse pounded so loudly I heard nothing else. Margaret gripped the arm of her chair. That boy is a fool, she muttered. But a dangerous one. I stared at Daniel, my voice barely a whisper. You knew? He swallowed hard. I knew he was stressed. That's all. But even he didn't sound convinced. I walked toward the stairs without waiting for anyone to catch up. Because suddenly, I remembered something. Last week. Late at night. A sound, soft, careful, coming from the basement. A zipper. A drawer shutting. Footsteps moving slower than usual. I'd told myself it was nothing. But now my heart was beating for a different reason. The basement door creaked as I pulled it open. The smell hit first, a mix of detergent, dust, and something unfamiliar. Like new fabric. I flipped on the light. And there, in the corner, under a blanket, were two large suitcases. My legs carried me forward on their own. I knelt and pulled the blanket away. The first suitcase was full, perfectly folded clothes, toiletries, a small lockbox. The second was stranger. Inside were my wedding photos. Childhood pictures of me. Papers with my signature copied over and over. My financial documents. Passports. And a burner phone. My stomach twisted. Why does he have your documents? Daniel asked quietly behind me. I didn't answer. Because the truth was ugly and loud. He wasn't leaving alone. He was leaving with everything he could use to rewrite his life. And everything he needed to erase mine. Claire covered her mouth, whispering, "Oh God." Margaret's steps were slow as she approached, leaning on her cane. She didn't gasp. She didn't cry. She just stared at the suitcases, at the life her son tried to pack neatly into boxes, and whispered. I raised a man who knew how to lie. But I never knew he could destroy. I sank onto the step, dizzy. The humiliation. The betrayal. The audacity. For years, I had defended him. Made excuses. Carried the weight of his moods, his disappearances, his strange phone calls. And all the while, he had been preparing for this. Margaret knelt beside me slower, but steadier than I was. Listen, she said, gripping my arm gently. You are stronger than he counted on. And he is weaker than he pretends. I stared at the bags again. 2 suitcases. One for him. One for the life he stole. The house was silent. But the kind of silence that happens right before lightning hits. Finally, I stood up. Where is he? I asked. Claire's eyes darted toward the window. He said he'd come back for the last bag before midnight. I took a long, shaking breath. Then I need to be ready. Not crying. Not begging. Not pleading for love he never had. Just ready. Because for the first time, I realized this wasn't a story about being left. It was a story about being targeted. Every line in the folder. Every dollar he moved. Every lie he told. It was all part of something bigger. And tonight, I was going to find out what. The next morning felt wrong even before I opened my eyes. My husband was already awake, something he never was on weekends. He sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, head low. Like a child waiting for punishment. I didn't speak first. I let the silence do it. He lifted his head slowly. His eyes were red, not from crying, but from whatever lies kept him awake all night. She told me you saw the messages, he murmured. I didn't answer. He swallowed hard. His jaw clenched. The man I married looked suddenly unfamiliar, smaller, weaker, almost scared. You weren't supposed to see them, he said. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it confirmed everything. He wasn't sorry he did it. He was sorry I found out. The sunlight through the curtains stretched across the room, a thin line separating us. And for the first time, I didn't cross it. How long? I finally asked. He knew exactly what I meant. Since the house changed owners, he whispered. So months. Months of them working together. Months of them planning. Months of me thinking I was losing my mind. Why? I asked. He looked down. Because Mom said you'd leave me one day, and I needed something secured. Something that would still be mine. My breath caught. It wasn't just betrayal. It was fear. Possessive. Ugly. The kind that turns love into ownership. She told me if we moved you out quietly, he continued, you'd eventually let it go. I stared at him. Let it go. My own home. My safety? My life? And the papers? I asked. He nodded. I told her to intercept them. She did. Everything in my body went cold. Not from shock anymore, but from realization. This wasn't his mother's plan. This was his. She just helped him execute it. He reached for my hand. I pulled away instantly. His face fell. You're my wife, he whispered. I did this for us. For us. My voice cracked. Or for control. He didn't answer. But silence was enough. I stood up, grabbed my bag, and headed for the door. You're not leaving, he said quietly. Something in his tone felt dangerous. A warning? A threat disguised as concern. I stopped. Turned. And for the first time since everything began, I didn't feel afraid. I'm not leaving, I said. I'm taking everything back. He blinked. Confused at first. Then terrified. Because he finally understood. I wasn't the quiet, obedient girl he thought he could move like furniture. I was coming for the truth. And I wouldn't be doing it alone. I walked out of the room, out of the house, out of the life he tried to cage me in. And as the door clicked shut behind me, I felt something in my chest unclench. Not freedom. Something stronger. The beginning of a war I intended to win. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake on the couch, the house breathing around me, shadows moving across the ceiling like they were trying to whisper something I hadn't figured out yet. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mother-in-law's face from earlier, too calm, too certain, too ready when she spoke that line. You don't need to worry about the baby anymore. Everything's handled. Handled? What does that even mean? By morning my head felt heavy, like it had been pulling answers from a place that didn't speak my language. And yet, something inside me knew I was close. Close to understanding why nothing in this house had ever felt as perfect as she pretended it was. When I walked into the kitchen, she was already there. Not cooking. Not cleaning. Just standing. Still. Her hands rested flat against the counter, and when she looked at me, her eyes didn't blink. Not once. You look tired, she said. You look awake, I replied. A small smile touched her lips. Not warm, more like someone rehearsing a facial expression they didn't feel. I suppose I had things on my mind, she said. I poured myself coffee, purposely turning my back. But I could feel her still watching me, like she was waiting for a line she expected me to say. You know, she said softly, there are some truths that only burden us when we hold them alone. I froze, spoon halfway to the mug. She took a step closer. Your husband, he told me everything. I didn't turn around. My throat felt tight, as if her words were hands closing around it. What exactly did he tell you? I asked. She exhaled, not a sigh, but something almost satisfied. That he didn't think the baby was his. The spoon in my hand tapped the mug twice without meaning to. A nervous rhythm I couldn't stop. And you believed him? I asked. She laughed, a low, dismissive sound. Oh, sweetheart, it doesn't matter what I believe. I turned around, slowly. Then what matters? Her eyes softened, not with kindness, but with decision. What matters, she said, is what he believes now. I stared at her, waiting for her to finish the sentence that felt like it was teetering on the edge of something dark. And she did. He's ready to be a father, just not in the way you think. My stomach dropped. What does that mean? Her smile widened, slow, deliberate, unnerving. It means the truth has many shapes. And the one you've been holding on to might not be yours anymore. I stepped back without meaning to. She stepped forward. You're a good woman, she whispered. But sometimes, a home needs a mother who understands the rules. The room pulsed around me, the walls closing in with every breath she took. What rules? I whispered. Her expression softened, almost gentle. The rules that protect this family. The rules that keep things quiet. The rules your mother never taught you. And then she reached out, not to touch me, but to straighten a cup on the counter. That tiny gesture felt like a threat. A quiet one. A practiced one. A final one. And suddenly, everything made sense. Not the whole story, not yet, but enough to know. She hadn't just been involved. She had been waiting. Waiting for the moment when she could say something like this. And I would finally understand what kind of house I had married into. I looked at her. She looked at me. And in that silence, the truth sat between us, heavy, breathing, almost ready. But not yet. Not enough to see the whole picture. Just enough to know it was worse than I thought. Much worse. I didn't knock when I entered their house. The door was unlocked, just like it always was, and for once, I was grateful. I didn't trust myself to raise a hand and wait politely. Not after what I'd learned. Not after the months she'd spent smiling in my face while tearing my life apart behind closed curtains. My mother-in-law was in the kitchen, slicing strawberries like she was preparing a Sunday brunch instead of standing at the center of everything that had gone wrong. The same hands that used to braid my hair before our wedding. The same voice that used to call me the daughter I never had. She didn't look up at first. Not until she felt the shift in the air, the kind that happens when someone walks in carrying truth like a weapon. Her eyes lifted slowly. Calm. Too calm. Sweetheart, she said, you look pale. Sit down. I'll make tea. Tea. Tea, when all this time she'd been stirring poison into every part of my world. My voice didn't rise. It didn't crack. I just said, I know. For a moment, she didn't move. The knife hovered above the cutting board, frozen mid-slice. Then she set it down and folded her hands with the quiet grace of someone who realized the game was no longer hers to control. She tried the soft approach first. What exactly do you think you know, darling? I pulled the envelope from my jacket, the real receipts, the testimony, the messages, the proof she thought no one would ever see. I dropped it onto the counter. The papers fanned out like spilled secrets. Her smile disappeared. For the first time since I'd known her, I saw something crack behind her eyes. A flicker of panic, buried under layers of practiced elegance. She picked up one page, the bank transfer she tried to erase. Another, the email she sent pretending to be me. Then the third, the one that tied everything to her. Her breath hitched. Where did you get this? She whispered. My question, I said, is why you did it. Silence settled between us. Thick. Heavy. Years of forced politeness collapsing in on themselves. And then she said, because you were supposed to leave. Her voice didn't shake. It didn't break. It was steady, like she truly believed she'd done nothing wrong. You were always temporary, she continued. My son was meant for someone better. Someone who wouldn't distract him. Someone who wouldn't weaken him. I felt something cold settle in my blood. All the moments she'd complimented me. All the holidays she'd hugged me tight. All the times she told me I was family. None of it had been real. You wanted to ruin my life, I said quietly. She lifted her chin. I wanted to restore his. And the money? That was the first time she hesitated. A small pause. Barely a blink. But enough. She looked away, toward the hallway, toward the office where she hid everything she couldn't control. I deserve it, she said finally. As compensation for everything I sacrificed. I breathed in deeply, because the truth was uglier than I was ready for. She hadn't just wanted me gone, she wanted to rebuild her world with my pieces. But the strangest part? I didn't feel anger anymore. Just clarity. You're going to fix what you broke, I said. All of it. And if I don't, she replied. Then tomorrow morning, I whispered, the whole town learns who you really are. For the first time, fear cracked through her polished expression. She believed me. And she should. Because I wasn't leaving without taking back every piece of my life she tried to steal. By the time evening settled across the house, everything felt too quiet, the kind of quiet that lets bad memories move around like they own the room. I sat at the kitchen table, the same one where my mother-in-law used to lecture me about being more grateful. Her voice still lived in the grain of the wood. My phone was face down in front of me. I didn't want to look at it. I didn't want to hear from anyone. Not after what I found. Not after the files. Not after realizing she wasn't just controlling. She was capable of ruining my entire life. But silence never stays long. It rang. Once. Then again. I didn't recognize the number. But something in my chest tightened, like my body knew before my mind did. I picked up. A man's voice. Calm. Too calm. Is this Mrs. Avery? He asked. Yes, I whispered. This is Detective Harmon with County Investigations. I believe you filed a digital tampering report a few hours ago. My stomach dropped. I filed nothing. Not yet. Not officially. I didn't, I said, confused. I haven't spoken to anyone. There was a pause. A long one. Well, he exhaled, ma'am, someone filed it in your name. I froze. He continued, the report says you're accusing your mother-in-law of harassment, falsifying evidence, and stalking. A cold ripple ran down my back. He wasn't lying. Every word matched the truth. But I wasn't the one who told it. Ma'am, the detective said quietly, whoever submitted this, had access to your private files. My breath hitched. My mother-in-law. She had everything, my computer, my camera, my passwords. She had the access. She had the motive. But why would she report herself? The detective seemed to hear the confusion in my silence. It was submitted anonymously, he clarified. Through your cloud account. Under your signature. I stood up from the chair slowly, feeling the floor tilt under my feet. She's setting me up, I whispered without meaning to. He inhaled. Ma'am. I need you to listen carefully. Whoever filed this, didn't expect the system to notify you. What does that mean? It means they wanted it on record, he said. But not traced back to them. The room swayed. Someone wanted the truth halfway out. Just enough to shake the walls. Not enough to bring them down. The detective's voice softened. Are you safe where you are? I looked toward the hallway. Toward the framed family photo she insisted we hang. Toward the door she had once opened without knocking, saying, a wife shouldn't hide anything. I swallowed hard. I don't know. Another long pause. Then I'm sending a unit, he said. I didn't argue. I didn't breathe. When the call ended, the house felt different. Not quiet. Watched. Someone was 2 steps ahead of me. Someone who thought filing a fake report would confuse me. Slow me down. Scare me. But they made one mistake. They forgot that once a story is on record, it can't be erased. And I planned to finish it. I didn't hear her walk in. The courtroom had emptied out slowly, like everyone was afraid to leave the truth behind. Papers still lay scattered on the table, the judge's chair creaked somewhere in the back, and I sat there, letting the last 30 minutes finally settle in my bones. My mother-in-law stood by the door, one hand on the frame, the other holding her purse so tight the leather bent. She wasn't crying, that would have been too easy, too honest. Instead, she stared at me with that same expression she had the night I married her son, the one that said you'll never be good enough for this family. But now she was the one exposed. She stepped forward, slow, cautious, like approaching someone dangerous. "Are you happy now?" she whispered. Her voice didn't shake. Mine did. "Happy?" I said. "Your son almost sent me to jail for something you did." Her eyes flickered, just for a moment, the closest thing to guilt I had ever seen on that woman's face. "You ruined the family's name," she said. I laughed. Quiet. Tired. "You forged my signature. You transferred the money. You pushed him until he believed you over me." She pressed her lips together, the way she always did when she wanted control but couldn't get it. "If you had just behaved." Behaved? I stepped closer. "I was your daughter-in-law, not your enemy." She didn't answer. She didn't have to. The silence between us finally told the truth. For the first time, I realized something. All the damage, all the accusations, all the lies, they didn't come from my husband. Not really. They came from her. He was just the tool she used. And now, standing under the pale courthouse lights, she looked so small. So human. So breakable. "I never wanted to hurt you," she said suddenly. I believed her, but not in the way she meant. She didn't want to hurt me. She wanted to control me. And when she couldn't, hurting me became the second option. I let out a slow breath. "You know. I won't destroy you. Even after everything. But I won't protect you again either." That landed. She blinked, once, twice, and for the first time since I'd known her, she stepped back from me instead of forward. "I hope," she said quietly, "you don't turn my son against me." I didn't answer. Because the truth was, she had done that herself. When I walked outside, the air felt different. Colder. Cleaner. My husband was standing by the steps, hands in his pockets, eyes red in a way I'd never seen, the kind of red that comes from realizing your mother isn't the woman you believed she was. He didn't speak. Neither did I. We just stood there, letting the weight fall between us like rain. Finally, he said, "I'm sorry." And for the first time, I believed him. Not because he said it. But because he meant it. Some stories end with revenge. Some end with justice. Mine ended with something quieter, a truth that finally stopped hiding. I held onto the railing, looked up at the sky, and whispered the first peaceful thought I'd had in months. It's done.